Great. We are all good. Well, as we mentioned, we are honored today to have Blake Mycoskie joining us. Blake is famously the founder of TOMS Shoes, and soon is also going to be the founder of Enough, a really cool new nonprofit that he's got coming here. So, Blake, really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is exciting. You're getting to see, talk about entrepreneurship. You get to see right in the middle of the sausage making as we prepare for our big launch on January 6th. You're catching me at exactly the right time.
I love it. So let's talk about Enough.
Yeah.
What is the very premise of Enough, and why did you decide to launch it?
Well, I think it ties probably back to Tom Shoes. For the people who might not be as familiar with Tom Shoes, I started Tom Shoes in 2006. At that time, I was 29 years old. I had started 4 or 5 other businesses, just small businesses. And then I was down in Argentina and I saw a lot of kids that didn't have shoes. And I wanted to do something to help them get shoes because I heard that they needed shoes to go to school. And I came up with what I thought was just a really simple idea. It was actually not even a business, it was a project. And the idea was if we sell a pair of these shoes that they make in Argentina in the US, then we would come back and give away a pair to a child in need. And, we called it the Tomorrow Shoe Project. And that's where the name TOMS comes from the word tomorrow. And so we started selling them out of my apartment in Venice, California. And we got a couple of big, media articles, Vogue magazine, LA Times, about what we were doing and how it was so unique that we were giving something away every time we sold it. And it really took off. And so it became a business and became actually the fastest growing shoe company in the world for 3 years. We ended up giving 100 million children shoes. The valuation of the company was about $650 million when I sold it. Just an incredible experience as an entrepreneur to build something that was, successful financially, that made, over 40 of my first employees multimillionaires, and to give away 100 million shoes to children was like the dream. And so I say all that just to kind of give you a backstory because I think it sets up what happened next. And that was I sold the company. I had 2 kids. I was traveling all the time. I wasn't really around enough. And I really wanted to focus on them and not work so much because I'd been working so hard since I was 18. And no one prepared me for what life would be like after selling Toms. 3 things happened. The first thing is I lost my sense of purpose. Every day I woke up and I was excited to work because I had this purpose of helping these kids get shoes that desperately needed them. The second thing is I lost my community. I had 350 employees scattered all over the world that had become like best friends, in building this company from the ground up. And they were really my family. And so when I sold the company, I had a dream of moving to the mountains because I love snowboarding. And so I moved to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And so I wasn't in the same city of all my friends. I didn't have my purpose. And then also in Wyoming in the wintertime or for half of the year, it gets dark at like 5 p.m. And that's not good for one's mental health if you're used to living in California in the sunshine. And so what happened is I started to get depressed. And I had never experienced depression. And I really didn't know what to do. It really initially was really frightening because I didn't like the way I felt. I didn't like the way I was engaging with my family. I had low energy, all these things that I'd never experienced. And I kind of panicked. And I think I did what, a lot of people do maybe when they sell their company and all of a sudden they have a bunch of money is I tried to throw money at the problem. And so I built the dream house and I got the classic cars and I took the vacations and I did all these things externally to try to feel, now I know to try to feel that I was enough, but I didn't have the words for it back then. And the more I did these external things, the worse I felt. And my depression got worse and worse and worse. And it got really scary. I got to a really, really, really dark place, a place where I didn't even know if I wanted to continue living. And that was about 3 years ago. And from that place, thankfully, I hit rock bottom and I realized I needed to reevaluate pretty much everything in my life. And I went to a facility, I got an amazing therapist. And there I really worked with what is called a core wound. And I realized that my core wound my whole life was that I never felt that I was enough. No matter how many tennis matches I won as a college player, no matter much money I made in business, no matter how many people I helped with Tom shoes, I never felt that I was enough. And that was affecting every aspect of my life. And when I tried to feel enough by doing all these external things with the money, it made it worse, because nothing worked. And when nothing is working, that's when you really panic. And that's why I got such a dark place. And so once I recognized that that was a wound that existed for me, then I went on a year-long journey to heal that. And I did a lot of different therapies, went to a lot of different places, went to India for several weeks, like really took this seriously. And the goal was to really reprogram my subconscious and my neural pathways around this limiting. And I did it. And I started to feel better. I started to feel peace than I'd ever felt in my life. And when I was in India and really feeling better for the first time, maybe in 10 years, I realized I had this beautiful meditation and this download of like, wow, like I'm not the only person that feels this way. A lot of people don't feel enough every day. And especially young people, because of social media, they're constantly comparing themselves to everyone else. And I think I want to go back and I want to figure out a way to help people and help people know that they are enough and that this moment is enough. And by feeling enough doesn't mean that you're complacent or mediocrity or whatever. It actually is a feeling of peace that allows you to perform well. And so I came back to the States and I thought about like everything I did with Tom's and how we really made a huge difference in the world with that. And I came up with this idea for this bracelet. And so I'm wearing one here, and you can kind of see, I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but it's this hand beaded bracelet made in India. And I wear it every day as a reminder that I'm enough. But more importantly, I give them away to people to share that message with others. And so we are in the process of building this organization. It's actually a really interesting model too, since you're in a business class. It's, we are enough as a nonprofit that actually owns a for-profit business. And that business is the thing that, makes the bracelets and sells the bracelets and operates like a regular business. But 100% of our profits go to the nonprofit that then goes to the organizations. And so it's really, I think, hopefully it will be a case study someday in how to start a social enterprise that is 100% for the public good and not necessarily to make shareholders rich. And so I'm excited about the structure that we've created. It's also one that was pioneered by Newman's Own salad dressing, if you've ever aware of that business. But yeah, we launched in January, and my goal is to become a massive fundraiser for mental health nonprofits all over the world with this.
So let's rewind and think about that journey you went through with Tom's. Now that you've had, kind of that figuring out that wound, when
Yeah.
you think about those highs and lows of entrepreneurship, what would you have done differently during your journey of building Tom's if you kind of knew now about yourself what you didn't know then?
It's a great question. I mean, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. I mean, I think that a lot of what I was doing, and I think what a lot of entrepreneurs that maybe struggle with this is it's just we're just trying to stay above water, because I didn't have a healthy sense of self-worth and enoughness. I was just constantly trying to have the next accomplishment, the next, magazine cover, the next, award for helping in Cambodia or Guatemala or Ethiopia or all the places we were. And 'cause that was like, in a sense, that was what was fueling me in really kind of the same way that, sugar might give you energy for a little bit, but it's not how you want to build your diet. That's the way I think about it. And so now knowing that I'm enough, whether this project works or not, or whether you guys like it or not, like it's just, I have a sense of peace, and I actually have a sense of security that is actually, I think, going to help me perform even better as an entrepreneur this go round, because I'm not so influenced by day-to-day reactions, successes or failures of a marketing campaign or an employee, or it's, to me, there's a security now that does not come from the success of the business that is within me that then allows me to think, I think, much more strategically and long term and not just chasing the highs as you mentioned.
Yeah. So thinking about that a little further, the identity of a founder often gets tied to the entrepreneurial venture that they're behind.
Sure.
No matter what, you're always going to be known as the founder of Tom Shoes.
Yeah. And some
And
people
with
call me
entrepreneurship, yeah,
Tom.
sometimes it works out great and you have an amazing exit, and a lot of times it doesn't.
Yeah.
Majority of entrepreneurship and startups don't work. How do you think about what entrepreneurs should do when you think about that identity of the company that you're behind
Mm.
and a separation for those two things?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really hard because you're right. Most businesses don't work. And so if your whole identity is caught up in your business and your business doesn't work, then that is saying to you, well, maybe you don't work or maybe you're not valuable. And so I think it's just super important that, and this is why I'm so focused on talking and speaking to high school students and college students, is that you really do the personal development work so that your identity is not so connected to your output from business. Because the thing is it's great to use, it's an advantage to use your personal story and your identity to build a business. And I definitely did that with Tom's, but I'm not Tom's. Like Tom's is an entity in itself, and whether Tom's is successful or not doesn't mean I'm successful or not. And so I think it's just really important to have really great, community, really great friends, investing time in hobbies and other things besides just work. And I think it's fine to have an identity as an entrepreneur because an entrepreneur is, in some ways, I believe, a way of looking at the world, the way of entering into business, but not the specific business. So you see a lot of entrepreneurs that have five failures and then a big success. They didn't let their identity be connected to the businesses that failed. They had their identity of like, I'm the type of person that sees opportunities that others don't. I take risk. I start businesses. And I believe one day one of those are going to be successful. And I think that's the attitude and the mindset you want to have versus, oh my gosh, this one idea is my whole identity. And then I'll say one more thing to that, because this is also something that I've spoken about for years, and that is entrepreneurs to be very careful not to fall in love with their idea. Like it's hard, but like what I see entrepreneurs is they become so in love with their idea because they think that's like the only entrepreneurial idea they'll ever have. And then when the signs start showing that this idea is not going to work, they still give it an extra 2 or 3 years of their life, or remortgage their house or ask money from friends. And they're just so connected to that idea as their identity that they don't make good decisions about when it's time to say, this isn't working, I'm moving on. And so I always say is like, love what you do, have passion, but your idea isn't your soulmate in business. Like it's one idea. And I promise you, if this one doesn't work, if you're the type of person that's an entrepreneur, you're going to have another one. So you got to know, you got to have that kind of that relationship with that idea has to be one that is it's just really thoughtful and not of like it's my only idea.
So related to that, as you mentioned, your original purpose was putting shoes on kids and that great
Yeah.
mission. Along the way, you pioneered that business model of the buy one get one, or buy
Yeah.
one get one, more importantly. And I think all of us have seen many, many pitch decks that was the Tom shoes for this.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
how did you think about with that original purpose, then a business model that evolved? And was there a time that you realized that business model needed to change and you could maybe still live the purpose in a different way?
Well, before I answer that, I think I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things that I'm really probably most excited about enough is I'll show you this real quick if you don't have one there. So this is the box that the bracelets come in. And what's really unique about this is when you buy a bracelet for yourself, you actually are committing to give one to someone else. So at Tom's, it was one for one, meaning you buy one, we give one. Now, the one for one is you buy one and you commit to give one. And so what's cool about that is every person who wears a bracelet is also a giver themselves. So they get the joy and the experience of sharing that message, whether that's with a friend or a stranger or a parent or a daughter or son, depending on, where they are in life. And so I think what's cool about this whole evolution is, I still think that there's value in the original one for one model that I created that, as you said, so many people have emulated. But I also think it's important to evolve as an entrepreneur. And that's kind of what we've done here is thinking about how do we still honor that I'm kind of known for one, but in a new way that allows people to be more participatory in what they're doing. And so that I'm really excited about. And then to get back to your question about could you still have your purpose without the model? At TOMS, the whole brand was based on one for one. And I think that had we ever abandoned that, then it would be really hard to stay on purpose because I think that was the promise that we came to people with. Same way that the promise of enough is 100% of our profits will fund mental health organizations that are transforming and saving lives every day. If well, legally, we can't abandon that promise because I've made it in the bylaws of the incorporation documents. But that's a promise that we have to keep the same way that I think Tom's had to always keep the one for one.
So, over the years, you went from solo founders starting this mission to, as you mentioned, up to 350 employees when it was done. How do you think about that mental health journey from when you're a founder, then when you have to be strong for all of those employees that report to you? How do you think
Yeah.
about how that changes and what advice you give today?
It is a lot of pressure, especially if you really care about people and you see I mean, I used to call the Tom staff our family members, not even employees or staff or coworkers. So it was a very personal relationship. And that does take a toll on you because not everyone that works at the company is going to work out. So you're going to have to let people go and people are going to be unhappy about, so and so's getting paid more than and I don't understand why. And there's just a lot of stuff that comes up that you're going to have to deal with. And it does take its toll. I think the most important thing I would give it in terms of advice as a company really ramps up is to really continue to invest in your core, they would call it an executive team, I guess, but your core people that surround the founder, because ultimately they become the representative of the founder to whatever department they're in. So, if it's, your head of sales, your head of legal, your head of finance, your head of, these people basically are your day-to-day spokespeople to the rest of the organization. And so the most important thing to do, I think, to keep your culture consistent with how it started and to also not be overwhelmed by the size of the staff is to have, the team that surrounds you just be absolutely rock solid and totally really living the mission that you started with.
Love that. So you mentioned Enough is going to be supporting different organizations and nonprofits that focus on mental health. What are some of those organizations that are on your initial founding partner list?
Yeah, so one of them I really love is Active Minds. And what they do is they train high school and college students to be aware and to be able to recognize when a student might be struggling mentally, and then to offer group, kind of counseling, at the high school or at the college. And they've trained over 10,000 students to do this. So by no means are they taking the role of a therapist, but they are able to kind of talk to a student in a way that won't embarrass them or won't, cause them to have further distress, and then to potentially get them the help that they need. It's to me that is like I wish I had that when I was in, high school or college. I think that's it's so important. And then there's another organization actually called Project Healthy Minds, which is totally different, which is really creating the biggest resource online for all mental health, needs. And there's actually surprisingly so many free services online that can help someone who might be struggling at all different levels. So it could be everything from suicide prevention to just I'm feeling, kind of detached and stuck and slightly depressed. What do I do before it gets worse? And so they're really working hard to make those resources available to everyone. One of the things that I think that, I'm kind of most interested in with our partners is that they're really doing kind of work on the ground with people who might be struggling to get them the help that they need quicker. Because I think that how these mental illnesses, and definitely mine, escalate is when you're isolated and you don't have someone to talk to. And so really we're supporting organizations that are really helping in that way.
I love that. Perfect. Well, that's kind of the main things I want to talk about. I want to turn it over. As I mentioned, we've got a group of founders joining us today
Yeah.
of all kinds, different stages of their company. So I want to see if they have any questions they want to ask you. So anybody got one as I figure out the camera? Go for it, John.
Hi, John Gately, founder of StoryWise.com, helping kids learn to read. You mentioned being in India and meditating. What role does exercise and meditation play in your daily life now?
Okay, so I could hear someone speaking, but I couldn't hear any of the words.
Yeah, come on up
So,
this way. I don't know why
yeah,
that's not.
sorry.
Sorry about that. John Gately, founder of StoryWise, looking at ways to help children read better than they are currently. My
Great.
question for you is, you mentioned India and meditation. What do you do daily for exercise or meditation to help with your mental state?
Great question. So I'm glad you said exercise. So one of the most important things that I found, and it's one of the hardest things to do if you're not in a good place is to move your body. But it is by far, I think I don't believe there is a magic pill, but if there was one, it would be exercise. I think moving your body, getting fresh sunlight every day is just absolutely critical. So one thing I do every morning is I try to just get outside and get the sun on my eyes and not on a screen first thing and then do some type of just even light exercise just to get some blood flow in my body. Um, I do try to meditate. I haven't been meditating as much lately. I will say I'm guilty of that because when I do meditate every day, just a simple 20-minute gratitude meditation, it makes a big difference for me. One of the other things that I think is really important, and I'll go back to exercise, is just community and connection with people. I think we unfortunately, can really isolate as entrepreneurs and be working all the time. And so when I do go work out, I try to do it with a friend. And if ideally we do it in an indoor outdoor gym here in California, so we're getting sunlight, nature, friendship, connection and exercise all at once. So I like to be efficient with my time. So those are all important things for my mental state. And they really, if I can do them all together, I think it even has like a multiplier effect. The other thing is I still do therapy every week. And even though I've been feeling great for the past year, I do one hour of therapy every day. And I find that or not every day, sorry, every week. And I find that that's super important. So a lot of people think you do therapy when you're struggling, and that can be very valuable. But it's also, I think, very important to be able to talk to someone about what's working and then to kind of reinforce those things like, oh, I'm, doing these things with my kids every weekend now, and I feel great about it, and they feel great, and I see them growing. Okay, I'm gonna do more of that because that's really working. And so, whether it's a therapist or just even journaling, like if you don't have a therapist, I think a journal can be a great tool as well of like not just what's going on when you're having a hard time, but also what's working when you're feeling good. So if you do start getting feeling off, then you can go back to that.
Love it. Anybody else want to ask a question? We'll have you come up here, so come on up.
G'day. Rob Lee, fellow founder as well. Your story actually increased my anxiety quite a bit because I feel like I've actually followed your path as well, but at a much smaller scale. Last year, I exited my startup, Subterra AI. It's now in the hands of a corporate company. I'm still leading it, starting to see my vision get diluted. I feel like I'm in a room yelling and no one's listening. And what I'm finding is my patience is getting shorter and shorter. I have a very young family as well. And my question is, how did you identify or notice that depression was setting in? Was it yourself that identified and by a moment in time, or was it an external person like your wife or your children saying, hey, look, I think there's something wrong?
I think it was really self-identified. I didn't know what depression was back then, so I didn't really know. I didn't have language for it. But if I look back, I mean, there were things like all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but over time, something that I love more, to do is snowboard. And I would go to the mountain and I really wouldn't be that excited to go snowboarding, and like that was my dream was to live in the mountains and be able to snowboard after taking my kids to school every day. And I was living that dream, and yet it didn't feel, like I even some days wanted to go. The other thing is I stopped calling my friends back. Like they would call me, hey, what's going on? I want to FaceTime. Like I want to come visit you in Jackson. And I'd be like, oh, I'd make excuses. And I didn't want to be social because I didn't want to talk about what I was feeling. The other thing is I just found myself like what they now a word that I didn't know then was ruminating. And so that's when you're thinking about the same thing over and over again. And what I found myself thinking about over and over again was like, oh my gosh, I'm 42 years old. Is TOMS the only thing I'm ever going to do to make a difference in the world? Like, and I found myself like waking up with that thought or going to bed with that thought. And so those were all, now I know those are all very clear signs that someone is depressed. Back then, I didn't know that, but those were some of the things that were starting to make me feel in a depressed state.
And can I ask one more question? This was for you guys. So when you were still part of TOMS, but you had other people kind of putting their thoughts and their vision into it, were you able to redirect it and have them listen to you and keep that vision aligned? Or I guess from my experience, that's where I'm at this moment.
Yeah.
I still have my vision. It's clear as day. I know where I want to get to, but there's short-term revenue gains that the corporate needs. It's a public company. And the pressure's all about executing on the short-term money.
Yeah.
I feel like money is a byproduct of following that North Star. If we follow
Yeah.
that, the revenue will come, trust me. But
Yeah.
it's, like I said, I'm just yelling in a room that no one's listening.
Yeah.
I'm trying to redirect the corporate people to listen to me. It's very hard.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of, empathy for you there. I've seen that movie many times with entrepreneurial friends of mine, and even a little bit, myself at times with my partners that came in later. I mean, I think it's literally, I hate to say this, but it kind of comes back to like who's in control. Like if you've given up control, legally, and they can do what they're going to do, then it's going to be really hard to change their opinion. And if you still have legal control and you can exert that kind of last vote, then you might have to be a little bit more more tough with them. But it's really hard. I mean, and when one of the hardest things and one of the most important things I think when selling part of a company is making sure that your incentives and your goals are very aligned. And so if they are incentivized by short-term profits and gains, and your kind of incentive is long-term value, then it's just not going to work very well. I mean, it's just people are people, and people will go to where they're, being recognized or incentivized. And so, if that's the case, it might just be time to let them, do their thing if they have control and move on to something else, as hard as that is.
Yeah, that's where I'm at now. I've got 6
Yeah.
more months.
Yeah.
Give it everything I've got to
Yeah.
keep it sailing in the right direction. But yeah, thank you.
But to the point before, your identity is much greater than this AI company. And that's the thing to really meditate on. And that you built an AI company, you could build another one or another type of company if that's what you so desire. But don't think that your entire identity is in what you've created, because it's much greater than that.
It's funny because I still wear my Subterra shirts every day, and my wife bags me out. It's like, you've got to change your shirt now. But that's my identity. But now I'm trying to build another tech startup to find something else. So
Yeah.
but thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Anybody else got anything? Come on up.
Hi, Blake. Clayton Ports with Affinity Workforce Solutions. I appreciate you taking a little time with us. But actually, that last point you made is a nice little segue to what I was going to ask. You mentioned sort of separating the identity, your personal identity, with your professional identity. I'm curious, through this process that you've gone on, how have you redefined success in your personal life?
Mm. Well, I have three kids. So I have a 30-year-old adopted son who's doing great, and I really don't have to worry about him anymore. But then I have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old biological kids that I share custody with my ex-wife. And a big part of my identity right now is as a dad, and I define my successes in terms of my connection and engagement with them, and how they're developing. And at the same time, even that can be a trap, because now as a parent, you can be like, oh, my kid's doing good, I feel good. My kid's not doing good, I feel bad. So I'm holding that loosely, even though I say that that's become a bigger part of my identity. But I think in general, what I, and this might sound kind of woo woo or spiritual, is just that, like, nothing external really defines my identity. There's a sense of wholeness and enoughness that is our birthright, and that I feel just when I walk outside every day, and that I get to be alive today, and that I get to talk to you guys, or I get to play this game of entrepreneurship, and it really is just a fun game to pass the time while we're here on this planet. I really am approaching everything as this, in some of the, some of the spiritual texts, they talk about, the life, this word Leah, and Leah is also a word for play. And so this is all kind of one beautiful play, and I get to experience, sometimes it's a tragedy, sometimes it's a comedy, sometimes it's all these different things, but I get to experience it all, and I hold it all lightly because it's all just one beautiful play. And if you look at it that way, then you don't get into the trap of I feel good if, or I feel good when. It's no, I can just feel good regardless. And that's what I believe, God, the universe, whatever you want to say, wants us to feel in this experience. And so I've done a lot of work around this, and it's the cool thing about Enough is I actually have to walk the walk every day. Like, I can't go give a talk. I gave a talk last night in Dallas, to a bunch of foster kids. And, here are a lot of kids, they're foster kids. I mean, if anyone doesn't feel enough, I mean, here, they don't have their parents, and they're sometimes going to multiple homes. And I mean, and so I can't give that talk last night and not really do the work every day myself to not allow anything to be affecting my sense of self-worth. And so I have to go back to my bracelet every day. Like, I am enough. I've always been enough, and just a very simple mantra. And I have to instill that belief into my kids and into the people that work at Enough. I mean, even though, we're, giving 100% of our profits away, we want to make a lot of profits so we can give away a lot of money. And so I have, 9 startup, partners that are all working, crazy 70, 80-hour weeks right now, which once we launch, we're going to get that down to a more, normal, workload. But they're doing it because they want to make a difference in the world. But I have to keep reminding them that whether this launch is wildly successful or not, like, we're all enough and we're doing our best. And so it's kind of a long way of answering your question, but I think the short version of it really is I and I think all of us should not let our identity be connected to anything external or any sense of accomplishment.
Absolutely. Beautiful perspective. Appreciate it.
And one thing I'll say to that, and just in general, is one of my advisors at Enough, one of my mental health advisors, I have a great board, is a woman named Kristen Neff. And Kristen Neff is a researcher at University of Texas, and she wrote a great book on self-compassion that has been wildly successful and helped a lot of people. But she did this amazing study with NCAA athletes. And what's so fascinating about this study is she was able to show that the athletes that continue to be hard on themselves and have the inner critic and I can't believe you missed that shot or you got to train 10 times harder because you lost that game and just literally the athletes that just drove themselves so hard did not perform as well as the athletes that started replacing the inner critic with an inner coach. And when they started saying when they lost the game, instead of, oh my God, I can't believe you lost that, you got to practice 10 times harder. When they lost the game, they said, you know what? I'm an athlete and I lost the game, and that does not define my self-worth. I am bigger than that game or bigger than that shot. Or, oh, I choked that match. Well, that was a physiological response from putting too much pressure on myself. So I'm going to try to have less pressure so I won't choke next time. And what happened was, is people who felt enough and lived that way, they didn't have as much pressure. And so when you don't have as much pressure, you enter what they call a flow state. And when you're in a flow state is when you perform at an optimal performance. And so when I talk about enough, especially to athletes or even CEOs, it's like this is not about settling. Feeling enough is not about being mediocre. It's not about like being like, it's not like, oh, because people say, I want to be more than enough. And I'm like, actually, you don't. Because when you really feel you're enough just as you are, you remove that pressure, and that's when the creative thinking happens. That's when the performance on the field happens. And so, feeling enough is really a performance mechanism as much as it is anything else, because it releases the pressure and allows you to enter a flow state so that you can perform.
Awesome. Well, any final questions or? We got one last one, if you don't mind, Blake, and then we'll wrap up.
Great.
All right, Blake, I've got a question from one of our members who had to leave early, unfortunately, but he sent me an email because he really wanted to ask a question, and that was, how do you balance contentment with ambition?
Great question. So I think it's a little bit of what I was just saying. Like, I am just as ambitious to build, a massive brand with enough that gets this bracelet on the wrist of every person in the world and raises hundreds of millions of dollars for mental health as I was when I started TOMS. But I'm also not tying the results to my self-worth. And so I can have peace and contentment with the journey and with who I am and with the process and the game of it all without only feeling content with a certain result. And so you take your focus away from results and from the journey. And that's what I was saying is, and that relieves the pressure. So you actually feel, you enjoy it a lot more.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Awesome. So with that, we're going to bring it to a close.
Great.
Really appreciate you taking the time to share the journey. And I think I speak for all of us. We can't wait to see enough come to life in January.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Cool. Take care.
Bye.